go to the GS paper 2 syllabus now. GS paper 2 syllabus. So please understand, students, GS paper 2 is the most dynamic syllabus in our UPSC. There is not going to much change in history or in the case of geography. Only the Indian society is the dynamic syllabus in GS paper 1, where we need to take certain inputs from UPSC, from current affairs to UPSC syllabus. But in the case of the GS paper 2, the entire syllabus is dynamic. When you read the newspaper, most of the aspects which are covered in the newspapers are related to GS paper 2. So that's why the paper that you need to score entirely or mostly depends on current affairs enrichment is GS paper 2. Are we clear? So my first statement here is this GS paper 2 is strongly related to current affairs. So the stronger you are in current affairs, then better you are in GS paper 2. So what does the GS paper 2 consist of? One is Indian polity and constitution. Indian polity and constitution. And the next is you have social justice, governance and administration, governance and administration, governance and administration. The next is international affairs and bilateral relations. International affairs and bilateral relations. So this is what we call it as our primary syllabus, the subjects. So first let us take about Indian constitution and polity. So in this case, our values of the constitution and processes, procedures, we need to understand. Let me put it this way. On one way, topic wise, I'm going to explain what is given in the syllabus. The next is when we talk about this, institutions, content wise, procedures, values, institutions, various procedures, and values. Supreme Court is an institution. Office of Governor is an institution. How this Office of Governor works and what are the functions of it is one thing. And then what are the procedures set in that is another thing. Let we say recently, let us say this State Election Commission is in news in Andhra Pradesh. So the State Election Commission is an institution which was created by the Constitution through 73rd and 74th Amendment Act. 73rd and 74th Amendment Act. So what is the structure and functions? How to maintain the autonomy and independence of that institution? And then what is the procedure for the removal of SEC? So these all comes into the picture over here. So one way we can talk that as a topic wise, and the second is the content wise, we can call them as institutions, procedures and processes, and then values of the constitution. In this context, let us understand a few things here. The first is when we go to these topics, or as UPSC mentioned, let us see the topics first. So in the case of the topics, we can divide it this way. First is fundamental values of the Constitution. And then how the power is divided, political power is divided. In the division of the political power, we have federalism. And then in the division of power, or else political power, there is another concept called separation of powers. Right, separation of powers. And then To make our democracy work, we have elections. The next is we have elections to make our democracy work. And then this is all is one set. Further to this, we have we have institutions. We have institutions. Now, another aspect is comparative study because our constitution has borrowed many procedures, processes, institutions from other countries. Most of the constitution, let us say, it is borrowed from United Kingdom, our procedures. But we have also certain things which have been borrowed from US, United States of America, South Africa for that matter, at a later date. So, and then the German constitution also was Weimar's constitution, Australian constitution. There are many things which we have borrowed it from many places. So we need to understand Indian constitution and its working from a comparative perspective, which I am saying that comparative understanding of Indian constitution vis-a-vis other countries. So I am clear as of now. We are talking about fundamental values of Indian constitution and then the federalism. Next is separation of powers, elections, institutions, and then comparative study of the Indian constitution vis-a-vis the other constitutions. Now, when I come to the fundamental values, remember our preamble is a reflection of all these fundamental values. And the next is we have fundamental rights. Next, socio-economic rights, which are called directive principles of state policy, fundamental duties. All these are the elaboration of our values. Fundamental rights, DPSP, fundamental duties. And the next is when we go to the constitution itself, what are the features of the constitution by and large, and how it has changed, how these features have changed? And how what is the history of the constitution? It means how did we develop this constitution? What are its features? And the next is out of this, what have changed? Why we have changed it? This is what we call it as amendments. Right to property. So right to property was a fundamental right. It is no more. Why the right to property was removed as a fundamental right? What was the conflict vis-a-vis that in Indians or else, or in the socialistic values of Indian society? So, how the right to property has come in conflict with socialism? So, what are the important amendments which have been made? We have to study those. So, history of the Constitution, features of the Constitution, and then important amendments. This is what we have to study. So, these two have to be studied together. Now, these two are related to comparative understanding with other countries. So, whenever you study this, support once you understand this, then you need to go for comparative understanding of Indian constitution with that of other countries. And the next is federalism. What do I mean by federalism? We have center state relations, yes or no? Have them or not? So today Prime Minister Modi is talking to the states. So we have different levels of government. Certain functions are given to union government, certain functions are given to state government, and we have a third tier of the government, that is what is called a local government. So the union, state, and local governments, how they are organized. Union, state, and local governments, how have they got organized? So in this, we divide that into what are the administrative relations and then legislative relations and what are the financial relations between these three levels of the government. So, Indian federalism, which is called a division of powers. The next one is separation of powers. This is division of powers. Union, state, and local relations. The greater emphasis here is on financial relations. The highest emphasis is on financial relations. Now, when we go to the separation of powers, it means we have three organs of the state. What are these three organs of the state? One is executive. It means our prime minister, council of ministers, all these are the part of executive. Then we have legislature, assembly, parliament, all these are part of the legislature. And then we have the most important organ that is called judiciary. Executive, legislature, and judiciary. So, when we talk about the executive, legislature, or judiciary, when we talk about executive, legislature, or judiciary, we need to talk about structure, functions, see carefully, structure, functions, and then processes, structure, functions, processes, and then challenges, privileges. See, I'm writing for the clarity's sake over here. In the executive legislature, what we are talking about? Structure of the institution, functions, processes and procedures in that institution, privileges of those, and finally, what are the challenges which these institutions are making. Now, so I have reflected over here. Please take a look onto that. The next part is elections. When we go to the elections, you know, we have a system in place. So, what is the nature of elections? Any election we talk about, universal adult franchise in India, especially for direct elections. So, this universal adult franchise, it talks about who can be the voters and who can be the contestants. And then, what is the election procedures? Election procedure. Then, there are challenges to the elections in India, election systems. So, money power, muscle power, all these are the challenges related to elections in India. So, recently, you might have seen local elections and the challenges faced by the missionary vis-a-vis the local elections. So, there is alcohol everywhere. In this context, what the state government of Andhra Pradesh did, it has amended the Panchayati Raj Act. So why the Panchayati Raj Act was amended? So this all. So in this case, for the elections related to parliament and state legislature, we have an act that is governing them that is called Representation of People's Act. The act which is governing us is the Representation of People's Act. So we study about this Representation of People's Act. The next part of the syllabus, it is related to institutions. Now, these institutions can be broadly divided into constitutional bodies. So by the origin, institutional origin, we can divide them as constitutional bodies. It means constitution has created them. Let's talk about elections. Election Commission is created. To conduct the audit, CAG is created, Comptroller and Auditor General is created. So, to conduct our exams, we have UPSC. And for state exams, we have State Public Service Commission. I'm taking Andhra Pradesh as an example here, APPSC. So, and then certain institutions were created by the Constitution. Then we have certain institutions which are created by laws of the Parliament and state legislature, laws of parliament and state legislature. Now, carefully observe. We have certain institutions like Central Vigilance Commission. It was nowhere mentioned in the Constitution. Later, it was created to our needs by the Parliament of India. So, these bodies are called statutory bodies. So, we have CVC, then Information Commission, Central Information Commission, State Information Commissions, Central Vigilance Commission, State Vigilance Commissions. We need to study about that. And further to that, few bodies are created by executive resolution. Few bodies are created by executive resolution. So simple example for this is what is that? Niti Ayog. Niti Ayog is not created by the law. It is created by executive resolution. So these are called institutions, various institutions. Now, by functions, by functionalities, certain institutions are judicial in nature, certain institutions are quasi judicial bodies. Quasi means half, partly. That's why we call quasi. Certain institutions are purely regulatory institutions. Let's take Central Pollution Control Board. Yesterday, we have got a gas leak in Visakhapatnam. So, why that particular plant is located at that particular place? Who gave the permissions for habitation surrounding that particular plant? This all comes into question. Then that's where comes pollution control boards. Now, if the points have to be pointed, fingers have to be pointed, CPCB, SPCB, State Pollution Control Boards, this is what we need to talk about. They are kind of a regulatory bodies. Let's take TRI. TRI is a regulatory body to perform, control, and regulate the telecom sector in India. This TRI also performs the quasi judicial functions. It also gives judgments on various issues that are coming up in telecom sector. It means an institution can function both as a regulatory body and also as a quasi judicial body. So, purely judicial functions, we have courts. So, already we'll be covering this as a separate topic, anyhow, in judiciary. Now, when we come to quasi judicial bodies, we have tribunals, National Green Tribunal, with regard to issues related to environment. And then when we go to the regulatory bodies further, many of the tribunals function even as regulatory bodies. But all the regulatory bodies are not quasi judicial bodies. See that carefully. So, one way we can call them as judicial, quasi judicial, and regulatory bodies are by their origin constitutional and non constitutional bodies. In the non constitutional bodies, we have statutory bodies and organizations that are created through executive resolution. So, this is the syllabus of polity and Indian Constitution in GS paper 2. Am I clear till now? So this is GS paper 2, Polity and Indian Constitution. So what do we have in the Polity and Indian Constitution syllabus? See carefully. We have values, features, history of the Indian Constitution and studying this in a comparative perspective with the constitutional features of other countries. And the next, we have our division and separation of powers. With regard to division of powers, we have union, state, local governments, and then separation of powers. We have executive, legislature, and judiciary. With these three organs, we spoke about structure, functions, processes, and procedures, and then privileges of these institutions. Finally, we had challenges these institutions are facing. Challenges these institutions are facing. And further to that, we have elections, where we speak about political parties, election procedures, and the laws governing the elections in India, which is related to Representation of People's Act. And then we had constitutional and non-constitutional bodies, where we talk about what is their structure, functions, autonomy. Whenever we talk about these bodies, the most important thing is autonomy or independence of these bodies. And then judicial, quasi judicial, and regulatory institutions. This is what is the syllabus with regard to our polity. And then we are moving to the next aspect of the syllabus. You know that. What are the subjects which I said to you as part of the syllabus? The first subject which I have discussed to you was polity and Indian constitution, which we have finished. The next subject which we are going is related to governance, and then along with that, social justice, governance, and social justice. So I'm clubbing the social justice also. So social justice is a minor aspect, but anyhow, we'll look at a separate aspect only. So let me remove this. Let us see the governance. So after that, we have another topic, that is social justice. And then we have international affairs and bilateral relations. Bilateral relations. Now, as we have finished polity, now we are going to governance. So when we come to the syllabus of governance, you know that administration is an important aspect of governance. I'm saying clearly, there is a difference between administration and governance, which we see in the later aspect when we study about the governance. So in governance, first we talk about how our civil services is constructed, how our civil services is constructed, is designed. So the civil services in India is the first topic in the syllabus. Civil services in India. So what is its design? What are its functions? What is the design and what are its functions? And what are its challenges? So when we talk about the designs, we talk about all India services majorly. All India services, IAS, IPS, Indian Forest Service, these are called all India services. So what is the design of these all India services? And what is the normal structure of organizing the civil services? So that is generalist versus specialist, like this. IAS is a jack of all trades but master of none. So this is called generalist system. An IAS officer will be posted at multiple places. He is a generalist. He is a man for every occasion. It means that he will deal with everything with the assistance of specialists. So we study about all these kind of things. And then how the civil services is acting as the steel frame of India, and how this steel frame is weakening, and what are the various challenges which we see. Simple example: corruption, weakening of accountability, growing casteism and communalism among the civil servants. All these are the challenges which the civil services is facing. So after this, we talk about reforms. How shall we change this civil services for better, so that in the era of globalization, the civil services shall act as a pioneer for change? So, how the reforms have to be brought in so that civil services can act as a change agent. So, this is what is civil services in India. The next aspect which we discuss, it is related to how we shall ensure systematic functioning of the civil services. So, systematic functioning, here we get something called accountability, then transparency, accountability, transparency. So, as we go further into accountability, we will try to understand the concept, and then we'll try to understand institutions, laws, institutions which we have to ensure transparency and accountability. For example, to ensure transparency, we have this Right to Information Act, RTI, Right to Information Act, laws, institutions, and then what are the various new mechanisms which are being developed to enhance the transparency? And what are the new changing phenomenon? So, citizen charters you might have observed, citizen charters. So, the citizen charters are nothing but they are meant to ensure greater accountability. They are examples of nothing but social accountability. It's a changing phenomenon of the accountability in India, social accountability. If you go to villages today, we have Grama Sabha is regularly organized and they conduct something called social audit. This social audit is nothing but an example of social accountability. And the next is the technology is changing the landscape of accountability in India. So, how the technology is changing accountability, governance as a whole, and then bringing transparency. So, today, if you see everything and every benefit which the government is giving, it is being put in the website. And second is you also have this RTGS, real time governance. What is this real time governance? It is nothing but what is happening in the field shall come to the headquarters quickly. Let me say, some gas leak has happened in Visakhapatnam. It has to reach and to be monitored from the headquarters immediately. So live monitoring from the headquarters, what is happening, how these people are being rescued, everything. So that is what is called real-time governance. Previously, something happened somewhere, a road is being laid. So the person has to give the report has to travel different levels, then it has to reach to the secretariat, then from the secretariat, in the secretariat, it has to go to principal secretary, then to the minister, then to the cabinet. This was the procedure. Under the real-time governance, what there it is happening, it has to expect it to come directly into the fold of the secretariat. So this is what we call as real-time governance. All these are being made possible because of what? Because of e-governance. Technology plays an important role vis-a-vis administration. So that aspect we called it as e-governance. So we have the syllabus of e-governance. In this, we study about applications, concept, sorry, concept, and then methods. We have concept, methods, and then we have applications and new developments or new models which are emerging. This is what we need to study. So real-time governance is a new method. And then today in the Western world, we have this holistic government approach. If you go to Dubai, once you enter into the airport, till you come out of that particular airport, you will be monitored. There is something called smart card. Today in the COVID-19, Arogya Setu is monitoring, and then these new models are also bringing in new challenges. What are these new challenges? Privacy related challenges. Or they are making the governments strong like never before. We are afraid to question the government because government knows something, anything, everything about me. So that's why today, what is the challenge we have? we have this challenge of holistic government. So holistic government is an advantage because it is interconnecting every department. At the same time, it is also causing a threat to the privacy which we have to enjoy. Let's simple example. Multinational companies, they are able to control our life, as I said to you before. So in this context, you have this Amazon Echo Dot. So it is there in your room, it means it is continuously listening to you. As it continuously listening means, it means the technology or what is happening in your bedroom, everything, people, the companies are collecting the data. So they know what your likes, dislikes, and these will be converted into certain market data to target you. It is going to create a threat to all our institutions. So let me put it this way. Cambridge Analytica, if you remember, it has collected the voters' data and specifically targeted them, micro targeted them. It has understood their behavior through Facebook, their likes and dislikes, and they are specifically targeted with the information to change the way they think. And that is how Trump is said to have won the elections. So don't you think the power in a most powerful country, in the most powerful country, is given into the hands of an individual through use of technology? So that's why the new concerns are privacy, cyber security, cyber terrorism is all other things. So, but new models, how they are expected to improve the governance, and what are the challenges they are throwing at us that we need to study over here. That is accountability, transparency, e-governance. Now, in this, the specific emphasis is on social accountability and then on e-governance. Are we clear till now, sir? Now, the next part of the discussion is the government brings in various schemes and programs. Various schemes, programs. These are the outcomes of certain policies which the government is making. So, policies, schemes, and programs of the government. So, midday meal scheme was a previous question. And then, national education policy was made by the government. This is expected to be a question this year. So, what is the direction government is thinking for the future in a particular sector? That's where it makes the policies. To implement, to realize these policies, it makes laws, schemes, and programs. So, we need to study these schemes and programs. But I want to exercise a caution. These schemes and programs, they are closely related to policies and these are rapidly changing. Policies are more or less stay for a decade or so, but schemes and programs change with the change in governments. So these topics will be dealt to you at the end of the course before your prelims. A separate course is done for the schemes and programs because after the economic survey and India yearbook is released, India yearbook is released, the schemes, programs, and policies will be consolidated to you. And before that, as and when the scheme comes in a current affair, in the news, that will be covered as part of the current affairs classes. So this is about schemes, programs, and policies. Am I clear, sir? With this, I am closing the syllabus of governance. Are we clear? Now, let us go another aspect which is closely related to governance, that is social justice and development. Because development, many people place it under administration, but I'm trying to keep it under social justice topic because it is most related to, closely related to empowerment of the people. So today, development is more related to empowerment. So in this context, I'm keeping that as part of justice. So what is meant by social justice? How shall we ensure different sections of the society benefit from the progress which we are making? How shall the benefits have to be distributed across the society? So this topic in GS paper 1 is closely related to Indian society. This topic is closely related to Indian society in GS paper 1. Now, in this case, to bring in justice to the people, we have certain constitutional protections. So, Dalits, if you go to abolition of untouchability, that is nothing but a constitutional protections. And then we have also created constitutional institutions to protect the vulnerable sections of the society. National Commission for SCs, National Commission for STs, all these are. So, constitutional protections, constitutional institutions. And then later, we have also created certain other constitutional bodies and statutory bodies. So, we have statutory institutions, statutory institutions. And then to provide them with the benefits, we have come up with certain schemes and programs which are meant for their economic and social upliftment of these people. Let's take in this statutory institutions and statutory protections. You talk about SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act, Civil Rights Act. All these are the laws made by the Parliament to protect the vulnerable sections of the society. So, various sections of the society, vulnerable sections. We talk about Dalits, tribals, women, children, old age population, minorities, transgenders, sexual minorities. All these come under the so-called vulnerable population of India. Who are they? SCs, scheduled caste, Dalits, tribals, and then we have minorities, and then women, children, old age population. Who else we have? We talk about the LGBT community. Everything it comes under this particular aspect. What are the constitutional protections? What are their vulnerabilities? How we want to protect them from their vulnerabilities? What are the schemes and programs which are meant to protect them? These all we study as part of the social justice. Now, as I said to you, development also I made as the part of this particular topic itself. Development means to make the society as a whole and the people to progress. So, in this context, what are the topics of development? One is what is the concept of development? What do we mean by development? Buying a big car is development. Protecting environment is development. What do I mean by development as a whole? And after the development, what is the process and procedure for development? It means what is the establishment we created for development? What is that establishment? And the third thing is where are we getting these necessary finances for development, developmental finance? Next, developmental institutions, World Bank, all these are United Nations Development Program, UNDP. They all are developmental institutions. In this case, they are national institutions, NABARD, and then international institutions for development, national and international institutions for development. Now, in the aspect of development itself, another thing, the empowerment dimension of development, so which is related to this only. In this, we talk about NGOs, that is, actors of development today. NGOs, which is an actor of civil society, various actors related to development. And then what are the other actors? Bureaucracy is an actor related to development. Now, the new phenomenon, let the people develop themselves. We facilitate only development. We are not going to develop the people, we facilitate them. So, self help group movement, SHG movement. So these all are related to empowerment dimension of the people and society at large. The next is any development needs certain sectors to be well developed. So what is the development for the community and people at large? Better educated, better skilled, and having a good health. So that's why the development has to focus on human development is the development of education, skills, and development of health. Health. Now, another issue, development is moving away from poverty, moving away from hunger. So that's why we study poverty and hunger. I'm writing this in red because these all have connections to GS paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, and paper 4. So, issues related to poverty and hunger and education, skill, and health, all these are related to the aspects of development. This is what is social justice. Now, let's go to the next aspect. So, let us understand the syllabus again, sir. We have done with Indian polity and constitution, governance, social justice, and development. Now, next we are going for international affairs and bilateral relations. Hope till now all of you are clear with the syllabus. Now, what did we discuss? Polity is over. Next is governance is over. Social justice is over. Development is over. Now we are going for international affairs. Now, whenever we talk about the international affairs, first thing we discuss is the bilateral affairs. So, neighborhood comes the first. What is the Prime Minister Modi's policy in? That is neighborhood first policy. What we have is the neighborhood first policy. Now, after that comes the major powers. Sorry, major powers. After the major powers, international organizations and institutions. And then we have our people settled across the world, which is Indian diaspora. Indian diaspora. And finally, important events which we need to know happening around the world and how these important events are expected to affect the important events are expected to affect all of us. The important events across the world and how these important events are especially going to affect India and different aspects of Indian life. Let's take China, or many of the companies wants to diversify their risk away from China. So they want to establish their factories, etc., outside China. So India is trying to benefit itself from that or not? So an important happenings around the world, how India is expected to benefit. So, in this context, violate neighborhood first. India and neighborhood. It means India, Pakistan, India, China, India, Nepal, India, Bhutan, India, Sri Lanka, India, Maldives, India, Myanmar. All these we discuss as part of this. And the next is major powers USA, European Union, Russia, Russia. To an extent, we also discuss certain aspects of global play vis-a-vis China. It means US-China relations will have a huge impact on India too. So that's why China as a major power we also discuss. And the next, international organizations. We said global groupings are coming up. So you know ASEAN, which is the important global grouping, and then United Nation organizations in this. You have lot many things. Now, Like today, WHO is under the scrutiny. So we have to study immediately about WHO. Trump has also stopped the funds to another institution, that is UNESCO. So we need to know what is this UNESCO and what are its functions. And with Kulbhushan Jadhav case, International Court of Justice is in the news, ICJ. And with regard to Rohingyas, a Muslim population living in Myanmar and atrocities against them, we have Myanmar is in news and Myanmar was dragged to International Court of Justice. In that context, Gulf Cooperation Council is in the news. Like this, we study about global groupings. And then we discuss about Indian diaspora and who are the people settled outside India. And then important events across the world. So, what is happening in Israel? Israel-Palestine conflict has got important repercussions across the world. And in the history, if you see, Suez Canal crisis, when Nasser has nationalized it, what were the consequences? How UK has faced the so-called shame on Suez Canal nationalization by the Nasser government, and how Mr. I think Anthony was the prime minister, then Ethan Anthony, and how why he has to resign in those circumstances. This all. So those we study about important events after was the Second World War. But Israel Palestine, now, what is going on in Syria? What is the crisis? And the power game in the Middle East, where Iran nuclear deal as an important aspect. And this Iran nuclear deal has an effect on Indian imports of oil. So it is going to affect us. So anything, whenever you are going to study, the impact on India is the most important aspect when you go through international event. If it is unable to create impact, then that is not the topic for you, more or less. So this is how we need to organize our international affairs syllabus. Hope I am clear till now here. So we have completed GS paper 2 syllabus in class. What did we discuss in the GS paper 2? We have discussed in the GS paper 2 what all we have discussed: Indian polity and constitution. The second is governance, social justice and development, and then international affairs with bilateral relations. This is in a nutshell about the GS paper 2. What are the highlights I told? The GS paper 2 directly preparation is directly related to current affairs. And the next is GS paper 2 is the most dynamic syllabus and most interesting too. But unless you study about the syllabus, that is structure and functions, you will not understand challenges and changes. So you need to know the basics first to understand challenges and changes. These challenges and changes, more or less, are reflected in your current affairs. So this is how your GS paper 2 has to be. Hope I am clear to you now. So with this, I'm closing the GS paper 2. Now I will take the doubts on this topic.